Well, good day, everybody. I'm Russ. I'm the Executive Director of the National Center for the Biotechnology Workforce, located here in the Innovation Quarter of Winston-Salem in the Research Park. And we're really, really excited today because we have a great interview with Beth Mitchell, who's our Director of Career Services at Forsyth Tech. And Trevor, good to see you again. How you doing?
Thank you, Russ. I'm doing all right.
Good. Beth, welcome.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Beth, we're so excited to have you because this is the time of the year, right, when our students are thinking of graduation, and graduation for a lot of students means jobs, right?
Yes, hopefully so.
Beth, you're the Director of Career Services here at the college, and you've been doing a fantastic job. And I just think that you have a very interesting background, having participated in one of your courses recently. Can you just talk to us a little bit about your background?
Well, I guess probably like a lot of people, I had a few different types of jobs after college and after graduate school. So nothing really exciting there. But in 2008, I did get a job as a career counselor at a local workforce development board. And I don't know if you two remember what was happening in the economy in 2008, but the community that I was in had a lot of furniture factories that were closing down, laying off their entire workforce. And so immediately when I got that job, I was seeing a lot of people coming in who really, some of them had not been job searching for over 20 years. I mean, they had been at the same factory for a long time. And of course, I mean, even within the last year, the guidance for job searching has changed. And so going through that experience really taught me that there's real value, and it's really important for someone to stay up to date on job search strategies and best practices and really be tuned in with what employers are looking for. Because often if you're doing a job search, you haven't had to do a job search in a while, and it can be overwhelming and scary, and you don't want to do it wrong, and you want to, land that perfect job. So that was really what made me, I guess I found my niche there, that I really wanted to be that person that could keep up to date with what was happening and then be able to help walk people through that process when they were job searching. So I stayed with that workforce development board really from 2008 on until I came to career services at Forsyth Tech in January of 2023.
Well, Beth, that's really interesting because I distinctly remember that time period, and it was a lot of pressure on things like workforce, and it was not a good time for companies nor people. But the rebound has been pretty significant and pretty good. And we're in that time of year, Beth. We have and Trevor's excited. He's a past student who graduated and found successful career here at the college. But people are eyeballing their graduations, and a lot of them are thinking about a job. Do you have any kind of just general advice for students that are going to, look for a job?
Well, absolutely. For our students, I definitely recommend them getting connected with career services. Like I mentioned before, job seekers really need someone who has kept up with what's current and the best practices. And that's what our grads can find in our office. And it's free for them. So if you were to go pay a career coach, you would pay a lot of money. And so I hope that our students will take advantage of having us here for them. We can coach them on all the steps of the process, whether they need help creating a resume that is going to get them through an applicant tracking system and a human being, whether it's preparing them for interviews, whether that interview be an individual, one-on-one interview, whether it's a group, panel interview, an in-person or a virtual interview. We can help teach them how to use, LinkedIn, for example, for networking, or how to negotiate their salaries, just lots of strategies, even for how to be successful once they do get that job so that they aren't looking for a job again, soon. And then for our students and grads, we host a jobs portal. It's called Career Hub, and there they can find job postings. The advantage of it, I always tell students that they're not going to find as many jobs there as they might find if they were just looking on Indeed. But the advantage of our portal for our students and grads is that they know if they find a job posted there, it's because that employer is looking to hire for SciTech talent. So it's a great opportunity. So basically, we can help our grads with the whole spectrum, and I hope that they will reach out and let us do that.
Well, Beth, that's great because I think one of the things I've noticed from the biotech workforce perspective is kind of a change that I noticed, whereas a lot of companies now are looking towards competencies. And, competencies here, we're really strong on, from a biotech workforce perspective, we like the idea of being able to show or demonstrate that we are competent in something. Do you want to speak to that a little bit and just speak to the more generalization away from biotech and whatever, in terms of, what is it that employers are looking for, and, what are those golden nuggets in terms of competencies? Yeah.
Well, that's a great question, because actually when we talk to employers about what they're looking for when they hire, there are really two things that they say that they are judging their candidates based on. They're looking specifically for competence, just like you said, and warmth. So they're looking to see, can this person do the job? That's the competence. And are they the person that we want to work alongside of as coworkers? And that's the warmth. And, the warmth is obviously easily or more easily portrayed during your interview when you're having a conversation, but competence really can be exhibited in both the application and the interview phase. So, there really are two audiences every time you apply for a job. And that first one is an applicant tracking system, or an ATS. And that system is going to review your application and your resume anytime you apply for a job online, which, let's face it, today, like, when is the last time you heard of someone applying for a job, in person? It's pretty much all done online now. And that applicant tracking system is programmed to search for keywords. That's all it can do. So it can't read anything fancy, photographs, pie charts, those kind of things. It scans for words. And that's really how you get your competencies in there, is by matching the keywords. But do either of you have any guess on how a job seeker is supposed to know what competencies or keywords the system is looking for?
Trevor, you want to jump in? I know something.
I can't think off the top of my head.
From my perspective, I would say it would be a definite skill, something that is, like, for instance, from a biotech perspective, I know how to pipette,
Mm-hmm.
So that to me would be kind of like something that they'd be looking for.
Right. Well, it's often hard for job seekers to know where to find. How do I know what they're looking for? And the clue is the job posting. So if a company is looking for specific skills, they're looking for specific certifications or experiences or education levels, all of that is going to be included in the job posting. And that is the information that applicant tracking system is going to be programmed to use to find the right candidate for their jobs. So my advice is, when you're creating your resume, that you want to try to pepper in some of those keywords that you have seen on the job posting throughout your resume. And so, for example, you may have some competencies that you have seen in the job posting and that are really relevant for that industry or that job. And you may include mention of that in your professional summary at the top of your resume. But then maybe you also have some certifications and degrees that you would include in your education section. And then, of course, your experiences and the skills and the workplace competencies that you have gained, you could mention in your work history section. And then often with people, we create an entire section just on their skills. And so obviously that is a great place to list any skills and competencies you have. And the more that you can include in your resume, even if you're repeating a couple of them, maybe you have a couple mentioned in your professional summary, and then you may also mention it later on, all that's going to do is increase your ranking in the applicant tracking system. Now, you don't want to like verbatim copy and paste over and over or anything. So you need to kind of be creative in how you write it. But the more you use those keywords from the job posting, which are the competencies that they're looking for, the higher you're going to be in the ranking with the applicant tracking system, and the more likely that you're going to be chosen for an interview, because the human being hiring manager is going to see the ranking and see that you're a really well-matched candidate. Now, here's a pro tip for you, that anytime you apply for a job, you need to get in the habit of saving a copy of that job posting. Because as we all know, once a job posting closes, that disappears and you can't find it again. And you will want to be able to review it before your interview for sure, because that way you go into the interview and you're prepared because you have been reminded, okay, this particular company and this particular job is looking for these specific competencies. And so in preparing for your interview, you can think through those and think of the examples that you can bring out of how you have proven and learned those competencies. But you can't do it if you don't have a copy of the job posting. And I've talked to so many people who haven't gotten that. They don't have it saved and they're like, I can't even remember. I've applied for so many jobs. Which one is this? And they go in at a disadvantage. So that's my first pro tip, is to save, always save a job posting if you've applied for it, so that you're going to be more prepared when you get to that interview.
Oh, that's great advice, Beth. Thanks very much. I think it's a dynamic process, right? And, it's amazing because now we're talking, I think we're starting to get into a favorite topic of yours. And so, I asked you in your session that you gave recently, how do you really create a great resume? And I think some of those pro tips that you've just given us are really fantastic. But you did mention that AI is starting to get into this. And can you just, take us back a little bit in terms of how you think AI is starting to work into the job function?
Okay. Yeah, I have a lot to say. So I'm not an AI expert, but from what I understand, it's basically when a computer system does something that historically has required human intelligence. And we've been using it for a while with things, think of things like Siri, Alexa, our navigation apps. But what's new, and probably what you're kind of getting at, is generative AI. And generative AI is really a subset of AI that can create new content. So the way I understand it is it has been trained to generate new data because it's been fed a whole lot of data. We're talking books, articles, websites. It's fed all of this information to train it. And then sites like ChatGPT, for example, they use language. And so being fed all of that training information then allows it to create human-like responses and conversations. So if you think about when you do a Google search, you ask Google a question and you get your answers. If you didn't get the answer that you were looking for, you kind of have to start over. But with generative AI, you can ask your question to something like ChatGPT, take whatever answer it gives you, then you can ask it for clarification or follow-up or to change its answer a little bit. And it remembers what it's already told you. It remembers your original question and it builds on that. So it's more like a conversation that you would have with another human. And, there are lots of different ways we can use it in job search, which I'm happy to talk about if you'd like.
Well, Beth, this is a really, really interesting area and application right across the board, right? I mean, when you think about job postings and you think about job descriptions and you think about the actual interview process and so forth, I can really see how generative AI can work into this. I'm going to turn it over to Trevor. He's an educational specialist and has a special interest in this. Trevor, it's all yours.
Yeah, so Beth, kind of continuing on the topic of AI, for students and faculty who may be searching for jobs, what are some ways that they could maybe utilize AI in that process?
Well, I'm glad you asked that because most of the people that I talk to, if they're even aware that AI can help in a job search, the only way that they really have thought of it is to either write their resume or cover letter or to maybe edit their resume or cover letter. And certainly you can use it for those, and I can talk about that. But really, there are a lot of other ways that you can use it in your job search that I don't think people are really aware of. But since I'm already kind of talking about resumes, I'll say that my recommendation is to never use AI to create the first version of your resume or the last version of your resume. So the best practice is that you write your resume yourself. And career services, we can provide you templates that we know will get past the applicant tracking system and as well as the human recruiter. But then what you would do is maybe copy and paste your current resume into ChatGPT and ask it for specific help. Maybe you ask ChatGPT, can you take my resume of my entire career that's, 5 pages long and shorten it to be 2 pages? Or can you take this resume that I've copied and pasted and help me write a professional summary that's going to be more impactful and less generic, something like that. But even better than that, what you could do and what I recommend people do is to copy and paste your resume as you have it, put it in ChatGPT, but also copy and paste whatever specific job posting that you're applying for and put it in ChatGPT. And then you can ask it lots of questions. Looking at my resume in this job posting, help me find areas where my resume is lacking keywords, for example. Because again, the first step is that applicant tracking system, which is looking for keywords. And ChatGPT can easily, look at the keywords in your resume versus the keywords on the job posting. Or maybe you want to say, here's my resume and here's my job posting. Help me help identify the skills or competencies that are most required for this job title. And then you can add those into your resume. You can review the list of whatever competencies that ChatGPT may give you as the most common ones for that job title. And then, of course, you only want to include them on your resume if you actually have those competencies, but then it helps you get the right ones listed that are going to be asked for. And really, so even before you're working on your resume, I think it's a great practice for people to use AI to really get focused. I see a lot of people who, because they're proud of their career, they're proud of their education and their work history, they want to include it all on a resume. They don't want to leave anything out because they worked hard to accomplish that, which I understand. But you really need to have a focused resume. And by focused, I mean focused on that particular job, that particular industry, because again, your resume is going to be reviewed by the applicant tracking system first. And if you've got a really broad or generic resume that's kind of all over the place, that applicant tracking system may not pick up the right keywords. You may have a lot of good skills in there and a lot of good experience and even a lot of good education, but if it's not related or relevant to that particular job, then your applicant tracking system may not pick it up. But also the other part of the process is the human being. And if a human being is reviewing your resume and it's all over the place and it's not focused or relevant, then they may just see, oh, this person doesn't really want my job. They would rather be doing, whatever else you have on your resume, and they could pass on it because of that. So using ChatGPT to get more focused in your job search can really help. So you could ask, for example, provide me with 10 job titles that would be a good fit for me based on my 5 years experience in this, my college degree in this, my interests in such and such, and my skills in, whatever. And then it'll give you a list of job titles that then you can look for specifically as you're job searching. Or if you're somebody that already knows what you want to do, you can ask ChatGPT to provide alternate job titles. Like maybe you've only been looking at customer service job titles. Well, ChatGPT, what are other job titles that are similar that I could look for and still use my skill set and my interest? Or you could ask it, provide a list of 25 employers that hire whatever the job title is. And all of those prompts would get you more focused on your job search and really help you be more efficient because it's going to eliminate some of the stuff that's not relevant that you may not need or may not help you get noticed. But then also, I like to recommend AI to help people with interview preparation. So even though most people don't want to do it, in fact, I've not really yet met someone who is eager to, it can be really helpful for people to have themselves filmed while doing a mock interview and then watch it back. And for years, I have done that in person, filmed a mock interview with people, watched it together, given my feedback, talked about how they could make their answer stronger. But AI can do that for us as well. So for any of our students watching, our Career Hub portal has that feature. But for anyone else, I have 2 things to offer. One is LinkedIn. So if you have a LinkedIn profile, you can go to their jobs tab and then interview preparation, and you can pick, it has a list of a lot of common interview questions. So you can pick the ones that maybe you really struggle with. I know that I'm going to be asked this, but I never know how to answer it. You can pick that. LinkedIn will ask you that question, and with your camera and microphone on, you'll give your answer. And then afterwards, it will give you some analytics. So maybe you were talking too fast, maybe you were talking too slow, maybe you used too many filler words. You're going to get some immediate feedback that way through LinkedIn. But another one that I recommend and would encourage people to check out is called Yoodly, which is spelled Yoodli. And Yoodly is for speaking what Grammarly is for writing. So, Grammarly is helping us fix our writing and be better writers. Yoodly is the same for speaking. And one of the great tools that it has is for interview prep. It's similar to what LinkedIn can do, but it has two advantages, in my opinion. One is that it offers more analytics and more feedback, and it gives you suggestions of how you can make your answer stronger. So while LinkedIn gives you some, I think Yoodly gives you more, because that's really what it's an expert in, is communication and speaking. But the other advantage of Yoodly is that you pick whatever question you want it to ask you. It asks you that question, you record your answer, but because it's generative AI, it listens to whatever you said, and then it asks you a follow-up question based on that you're not expecting because you haven't picked it. And that's really, more similar to what someone would experience in a real interview, right? I mean, with the LinkedIn, you can pick all the questions you wanted to ask, but with Yoodly, there can be a surprise based on whatever you've just said. So I think that's really cool for people to check out. And then also we help people figure out how they can use AI to negotiate a salary, because I'm telling you, that is hard for people. No one gets excited about having to negotiate a salary because it's so scary and it's your livelihood and it means so much. So this is one situation where I don't recommend ChatGPT. It's not the best source here because the info on ChatGPT is not current. It doesn't, go out and get current information. The two that I use the most for this, one is Microsoft Copilot, and the other one is Perplexity AI. And both of those do have more current information. So an example of how you could do this kind of at the beginning is go to one of those sites and say, I have so many years of experience doing this. I have a degree in such and such. What salary can I expect to be offered in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, or wherever you live? Both of those sites are going to give you the average salaries that you can expect, but they're also going to list out some factors that would contribute to that you may want to look into so that you can then use that to help make your ask when you negotiate. And the other thing about those two, Perplexity and Copilot, is that they also will give you the sources. So ChatGPT doesn't do that. It doesn't tell you where it got its information, but Copilot and Perplexity do. So if you wanted to go look further into something, you could go to that source. And then, so you've done that to kind of figure out what you can expect and what's going to be reasonable. Then after you have, an offer and you want to negotiate it, you can ask any of them, ChatGPT, Copilot, or whatever, here's my resume, here's my experience, here's my offer. Can you help me write a professional email asking, for whatever you want based on the following factors? And you will already have the factors that go into the decision for that salary because you would have already gotten it in the first step I mentioned there. And so then they give you an email and you edit it so that it doesn't sound like a robot wrote it. You make it personal, but it helps you negotiate based on the actual facts and not based on your emotion. And that is really helpful for people and takes away a lot of the stress. So there's lots of ways there, I guess, focusing, a resume, interview, negotiating a salary, lots of ways you can use AI to help your job search.
Yes, thank you for sharing all those use cases, Beth. Those are some really, really good and also really just kind of interesting use cases for AI. I didn't even think you could use I didn't even think about using AI to compare your resume to a job posting or another one you mentioned that was really interesting was kind of using AI to conduct a mock interview, for example. So that's definitely a really, really, really cool and I think really interesting use cases for AI during the job seeking process. Kind of talking a little bit more about resumes. Beth, what would you say is your best piece of advice for building an excellent resume? Or an excellent resume, sorry.
Two things. One, I would say is as you're working on your resume, always remember what the purpose of a resume is. And the only purpose of a resume is just to get that employer interested enough in you to bring you in for an interview. So it's important to remember it is not the place for you to document everything you've done, everything you can do. It is just to get them interested enough, hooked, thinking about you as a good candidate and want to bring you in. So that's the first piece, is just remember the purpose of a resume. But second, I think you have to always, always, always keep in mind those two audiences. And we've talked already about the audience of the applicant tracking system that is the first reviewer, and that you really just have to get your keywords incorporated there for it to make it past that. But one more note about that I don't think I mentioned is that those systems are not very sophisticated, and they often cannot parse out information that's inside of a text box, inside of a table, or even in a 2-column format. Now, if you were to just Google free, resume templates, you're going to see a whole lot of them that have 2 columns. They may have a photograph of the person. They may have a graph of the skills that they have, and they look really pretty. And it might be fine if you could just give it to a human, but it's likely that it is not going to be able to be read by the applicant tracking system, and it could kick it out, meaning a human being will never see it. So it's always better to keep your resume formatted very simply to get it through the applicant tracking system. But I don't think we've really talked a whole lot about that second audience, which is the human being, the recruiter, the hiring manager. And the rules are a little bit different there, right, than it would be for a machine scanning it. So for your resume to be impressive to a human being, you have got to make it to where they can quickly skim it. Research has over and over and over said that employers only spend about 6 to 7 seconds looking at a resume. And then they pretty quickly decide this is in my yes pile, my no pile, or my maybe pile. And I'm telling you, by the time they get down to the wire, that maybe pile has become part of the no pile because they have enough in the yes pile. So you really need to make it to where within those 6 to 7 seconds, they can quickly make a decision. I've also personally talked to many employers who say they kind of typically look at the top third of the page, the first page of your resume. And if nothing grabs their attention there, they don't even keep looking at the rest of it. So what that tells me is that real estate at the top of your resume is really, really pivotal and key. So you have to have relevant information there, the most important information there. You have to have included there what they're really looking for. And, human reviewers are not reading your resume. They are skimming it. And so to make it easier for them to quickly skim, you need to avoid full sentences. You don't need pronouns like I have done such and such. We're talking, phrases. Don't use paragraph formats. They will not read it. So we recommend bullet points to help kind of make it a little bit easier on their eye to quickly separate the sections as they skim. Another pro tip I'll give you is that a resume is just a page of words, right? A whole lot of words. And so if our goal is to help the employer read it, we want them to keep going down. We don't want them to stop after the first third of the page. One way that I recommend people to help with that is to, anytime you can on your resume, use a number and use it in numerical format. And what that does is, in a sea of words, if you have the number 4 or the number 2000 or whatever in numerical format, it's going to draw the reader's eye there a little bit quicker than it would if it was just, FOUR instead of the number 4. Now, that isn't going to help you with the applicant tracking system audience, but that will help the human reviewer. And if you can do that throughout your resume, it's going to help them. That is going to keep pulling their eye down their resume so that ideally they spend more time looking at your resume and they actually see the entire resume. So just another little pro tip to help you get the human being to actually pay attention to what you've put.
Thank you, Beth. That's some really great advice on just resume building. And it makes a lot of sense that, like some of the tips you mentioned, like having a really strong first kind of 1/3 of the resume, and also just making things more, I guess, digestible for, the human reviewers that way, which I just feel, and also just help them be more prone to kind of read through as much of it as you can. But I think it's some really great advice you gave for resume building. Thank you. So Beth, you've given us some really, really good advice today, just in general with all these different topics. But do you have any other advice that you'd maybe like to give for job seekers in general?
2 things. First is I'd encourage everybody to play around with generative AI. You're not going to break it. It's, if anything, you probably will just be amazed at what it can do and how helpful it can be. Just play around with different prompts. I mean, use it for all kinds of things. I mean, I think I've told Russ before that I found an excellent ice cream recipe through ChatGPT that I still make pretty frequently because it was so delicious. And, use it, try it out and play around with it and see how it can be helpful to you. But the second piece of advice I would say is to really try to connect with a professional in the career development world. If you haven't job searched in a while, things have changed, especially in the last year with generative AI. I mean, but even before that, when I told you I started working in this area in 2008, and at that point, it didn't last for long, but we were still giving advice like you have to have an objective statement and you have to have the line at the bottom of your resume that says, references available upon request, and you have to have your full address. Well, not long after I started in 2008, we stopped giving all of that advice and it changed, based on what employers were saying. But just last week, I saw a resume that had all three of those things on it. And, that's been a long time since we've stopped giving those three pieces of advice. So try to connect with somebody who has kept up with what's going on in the world of job searching. Every institute of higher education that I know of has a career services office, and everyone that I know of is there for both students and alums. So if you have any higher ed experience, reach back out to where you went to college if you need to. And if not, there are also community career centers around, but that's really it's going to help take away some of the frustration. Hopefully it's going to get you doing what you need to do to be noticed sooner so that you're not spending as many weeks or months job searching and as frustrated with not hearing anything. So I guess those would be my advice. Play around with generative AI and try to connect with a professional.
All right. Thank you so much, Beth. All right, I'll go ahead and turn it back over to Russ now.
Well, that was great didactic back and forth between you and Beth, Trevor. So thanks so much. Beth, I want to thank you so much for coming on today for SciTech. And, it's a little out of our wheelhouse. We're not talking biotech, but it's so important for biotech students, any student that is looking for a job. And you are definitely a well-seasoned professional in this area. So I want to thank you very much for coming on board today and sharing your expertise with us. Really do appreciate it. Thanks so much. And Beth, if somebody wants to reach out to your department or to you, how do we do that?
Yes. And actually we can help anybody in the community. So I encourage people to reach out. We have a general email. It's careerservices@forsythtech.edu. People can reach out to me directly. It's bmitchell@forsythtech.edu. And then the phone number is 336-734-7414. So yeah, we'd be happy to help talk with anyone. I mean, that's the thing. It's like, I love talking to people about careers and their jobs and, hearing like, how did people end up where they are and doing what they want. But, I know it's not necessarily biotech related, but you're right, Russ, that really any industry, I mean, you have to look for a job in any industry. So it really can be used no matter what type of job, what type of company, even, what location. It's helpful for everyone. So I'm glad you invited me. I appreciate it and I enjoyed it.
Well, thanks for joining us today. Really appreciate it.